You're listening to Walking Close, Living Changed, a podcast straight from our dad's heart to yours.
You're about to hear from someone who has lived out his faith in front of us our whole lives.
We've seen our dad walk through the best and worst of times, and no matter what, he always demonstrates humility, grit, and a whole lot of humor.
These aren't just words, they're the overflow of a life surrendered. And we're proud to introduce you to the wisdom of our dad's life. This space is for those who are learning to trust God in the middle of it all.
So grab some coffee and get ready to listen.
This is Walking Close, Living Changed with our dad, Pastor Brian.
Hey, welcome to episode 21 of Walking Close, Living Changed. I've been a little under the weather, so I hope my voice sounds okay. But with that in mind, I want to just keep this episode very simple. And I just about made myself laugh by saying that because I think all of my episodes are very simple. The day that I turned this podcast into something that sounds like someone who thinks he's a theologian is a day I might have to rename it. And so, who knows, I might try to sound smart sometimes, but for the most part, just like last week's message, I'm trying to come at my relationship with God as a child would come to his father or his mother or even his grandparents. Just be able to approach the one I know who loves me more than anything in the world, be able to trust him, lean into him, and come to know him and to be more in his image day by day. And speaking of day by day, that's what I want this episode to be about, because when Jesus taught on prayer, which I think throughout these episodes I've mentioned a lot, the Lord's Prayer. If I haven't, then one day I'll just go through the whole Lord's Prayer from beginning to end and give my thoughts on Jesus's teaching when he brought that prayer to us as a great example. But one of the lines in his prayer says, "Give us this day our daily bread." It's a very simple line, but it says so much. And I think that the stress might have been on daily. Not just asking God to supply your needs, not just asking him to be there for you, but to recognize that your relationship with him is an ongoing thing. It's something that you would pursue daily. It's something you would ask him about daily, and the provision for it, and even for your very sustenance, would come from him daily. There are a few things in the Lord's Prayer that Jesus took time to make his own comments on. Like immediately after he says amen in the Lord's Prayer, he explains the part where he said, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." Like immediately after saying amen, I think he knew the crowd would wonder about that part. Like, goodness, does God forgive us according to the way we forgive others? And so he addressed that. He made commentary on it. And he said, yeah, I kind of meant what I said. You need to forgive each other as much as you need to be forgiven. Well, farther down the line in his following sermon after teaching this prayer, he also talks about daily living, that the key to avoid worry is that we would learn to live day by day. And he finishes out the whole thought by, first he says in Matthew 6:33, "So seek the Lord and his righteousness, and all these things you might worry about will just be added to you because they come from a relationship with God." But then in the next verse, he says, "Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." This is the funny thing. He's not trying to say that if you live in what my pastor used to call day-tight compartments, like, how you can have an airtight compartment where air from the outside can't get in. It was so cool. My pastor would preach that we should live in day-tight compartments so that nothing can get in there except for what was going on today. So like if you're living in a day-tight compartment, then nothing from yesterday can get in to make you regret your life, and nothing from tomorrow can get in to make you fear the future. So that's a great concept, and it's actually what I'm talking about in this episode. But when my pastor said day-tight compartments, or Jesus said, because today has enough trouble of its own, neither of them were trying to say that if you learn to live on the daily, you'll no longer have any trouble. It's just that if you'll learn to live on the daily, then you can face each trouble as its own snippet of trouble, instead of allowing everything to pile upon you from your past, either all the decisions that you regret or the things that are chasing after you, or your future, the things that are making you worry, like Jesus said, what you will wear or what you will eat or how you will get along. And Jesus, of course, got really rhetorical when he was delivering this message, because he said, look at the flowers in the field. They don't worry about what they're going to wear today. And yet every one of them is dressed better than Solomon in all of his glory. And he says, look at the birds of the air. None of them worries about what they're going to eat today, but they eat better than anyone because God takes care of them. And then that's when he says, a sparrow doesn't even fall from the sky without God noticing. So again, it's not that there's no trouble. I mean, because a sparrow falling from the sky actually is trouble. But the idea is that if you narrow down your scope to a single day, you will be able to sense God's presence and his ability to provide for you better. And I don't know if it's just about sensing it. It's that's the way God deals with things. Even God respects day-tight compartments. I'm not saying that God doesn't want you to think of your future or even look back at the past and learn from it. Those are obvious biblical lessons to learn as well, and a part of walking with God. But for this message today, and for keeping it simple, Jesus said, worry about today, and that today has enough trouble of its own. And back to the fact that one day set aside is enough for God, I'll want to point your attention to his provision for the children of Israel when they were in the desert and they needed food. You remember, he sent them manna from heaven. And as you will recall, that manna would only last one day. And it's interesting, I'm going to point something out about when it accumulated or when it began to accumulate, because that's something I really want you to hear. But for step one right now, I want you to realize the manna only lasted one day, except when they gathered it for the weekend, because God wanted them to be able to rest one day, so the manna that weekend would last 2 days, which is so supernatural and crazy. But the story was written so that we could learn things like that. Like over the weekend, maybe you take a break from all worries, right? Like don't even toil. Don't even concern yourself with things. Don't even try to make ends meet. Just live one day free. But anyway, all the other days, you need to find the provision of God. And the way he provided that manna was that it would accumulate, but the people were only to gather what they could eat for that day, what their family could handle in a day's eating. Because if they tried to gather too much and they kept it overnight, it would spoil and turn to worms, which is really gross. And quite literally, when Jesus was teaching about daily bread, the manna of the Israelites had to have been in his mind to some degree or another. And so that's why he would stress daily, because he knows that our relationship with God, our trust in God, it needs to be built on the daily, and it needs to be held on to on the daily. And so that's a great lesson to learn about the manna. I told you to put a pause on one little thought that I didn't cover, and that is that the manna would accumulate in the evening as they were going to bed, and then by morning it would be filled up ready for them to take. And I think that's a cool lesson to learn for any of us who struggle with sleepless nights and worry at the end of the day. Because some of you might even sarcastically be able to say, Brian, I'm great with not worrying first thing in the morning because I have my coffee and I get with God. But then by midday, or by the time it's time to go back to bed, I can't sleep because of all the thoughts rolling in my mind. Well, for you who are thinking that or saying that, let me say this. The manna began to accumulate in the evening. And if you think about the creation story, when God created each day, the Bible records that evening came and then morning came, and then that is what made the day. And so it's like, for God, your day actually might start when the sun sets, which for many of you is when you start worrying and when you have your sleepless nights. So I'm just trying to give you a cute little handle to put on this, that if God says the day begins in the evening and ends at the next day's evening, well, then that kind of helps you with your worry. You can start giving him your worries at the beginning of the day, which is actually at like 6 p.m. So anyway, think about that for a minute and just realize I'm not being facetious. I'm not joking around. I'm being serious. Like, you guys probably know this, but the Sabbath that the Jewish people still celebrate, like from Friday to Saturday, it's not that Saturday is the Sabbath. It's that the Sabbath begins at sundown on Friday and ends midway through Saturday. So, like, for real, when God sees a day and when Jesus was teaching about daily bread, he might have actually been thinking from evening till morning. And I'll tell you this too. On one of Jesus's only sleepless nights, when the Bible said he had enough to worry about that it caused him to bleed through his pores, like he sweat great drops of blood, that was in the evening in the Garden of Gethsemane on what we would call the night before his crucifixion. But in his mind, it might have been the beginning of the day. So he is crying out to God and offering God his day, the worst day of his entire life. He's offering it to God at the end of what we would call a day, but at the beginning of what might actually be God's day-tight compartment. So that's something for you to think about if you do have sleepless nights, or if you are worrying at night, that stop seeing it as the end of your day. Like, get up from the bed and say, you know what, God, I'm going to start this day right. I'm going to give you all my worries. I'm going to give you all my concerns. I'm going to pray through until I feel better. And then I'm going to quickly lay my head down and get some shut-eye. When I wake up tomorrow, I'll be halfway through my day and ready to go without the cares that would have kept me up last night. So that's a cool way to think about it. But my whole point to you today is that daily matters to God. And it's not that God is requiring us to come to him on a daily basis in order to have security in our relationship with him. But there is something very healthy and significant about coming to God every day. Whenever I need to exemplify this point, I always turn to my relationship with my daughters. My daughters are my daughters. And it doesn't matter whether we have talked every day or whether it's been 3 weeks since we talked. They are mine, and I am theirs, and everything I have is theirs. And if they do call me, even though we haven't talked in 3 weeks, nothing has changed. Like, now maybe you had a dad or a mom who made you feel bad about not calling for 3 weeks, or you had to go through a whole rigmarole of apologizing, or they had to make you feel bad, like, oh, well, I mean, I guess you decided to call me when you finally needed something. Like, maybe that's how you were raised, so you can't see God in a better light. But I'm telling you today, Your security in God is not based on whether you talk to him daily. You're still his child. He loves you. He'll come through for you. He's been watching out for you. Your angels are still on assignment. All of those things are great and good. But for your spiritual health, it's better for you to take your daily bread daily. Nobody would expect to become Mr. Olympia overnight. Nobody would expect to go to the gym for 1 week straight, working 24 hours a day, and suddenly be amazing. Everybody who ever works out understands it's a longevity game and that they must pursue their health daily. It's the same way with so many examples in life that I would be beating a dead horse in order to find more examples. You get it. I get it. God certainly gets it, because God has called us to pray for our daily bread. Now, if I pray for my daily bread today, but I don't pray for my daily bread tomorrow, I might not have daily bread tomorrow. And I've been a few days without food. I made it. I've gone without food on purpose. We had a whole lesson on fasting, if you listen to all the episodes. So it's not that I can't go without food, but the way God has designed this, your relationship with him is supposed to be built on a daily basis. I mean, think about guys like Daniel. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. And when his enemies made the king put that edict out, which said you can't pray to anybody except for the king for a few weeks, Daniel didn't say to himself, oh, well, my relationship with God is secure, so I could take a few weeks off of praying and seeking God's face because, hey, I'm already a prophet. I'm already a man of God. I already have everything God wants me to have. I'm just kind of maintaining this thing and just gaining power by being with God every day. So, it'll probably last me for a few extra weeks. No, he didn't say that at all. Daniel said, I don't care who you are, you're not taking away my daily time with God. And then he faced the lion's den. As you guys all know the story was written so that we would learn some things. And one of the things we can learn from Daniel is that he had daily devotion to God. And he paid a price for it because he refused to give it up, even when it would benefit him to give it up. He did not give up coming to God on the daily basis. And I said I would keep this super simple, so you can skip this next part if you don't want some deep theology. But a lot of you have heard of that abomination of desolation, like the thing Daniel prophesied about, like the day the devil would be able to take over and establish his kingdom. And a lot of people have made that our future, like they use that as like quote unquote end time prophecy. And there's so much to be said about that. You can interpret it 1,000 ways if you want. But one very cool point you can make from that story, regardless of when it applies or whether it's futuristic or whether it had to do with his time or a time immediately after him, is that he said there was a requirement before the devil could take over. And he didn't even call it the devil. It was just that an abomination of some sort would take its seat in God's temple. And so it was a nasty thing that he was prophesying, that someone very evil would put himself forth as God and demand to be worshiped. Well, that had happened in Daniel's day. It happened in many other people's days. So it was going to happen again. And that sort of behavior among leaders is cyclical. So it might happen in our day too. But what Daniel said, and you can go back and read this yourself in the book of Daniel, is that in order for the abomination of desolation to occur, the daily sacrifices must be removed. Now, I'm not going any deeper than that, except to say to you that some of the things that would love to have control of your life, some of the bad habits, some of the bad thinking, some of those worries that we talked about earlier, all those things that would love to have a seat of control in your life, one thing they might be looking for is to see that you don't have daily devotion. And that way they can come in, notice that you're unhealthy, and take that spot. Well, that's about as deep as I want to get on that, but it is definitely a good point to support the whole point I'm trying to make to you today. And that is that when Jesus taught us a basic prayer, there were many things to pray within that prayer. And one of them was, Lord, provide for me today what I need today. Well, maybe because tomorrow won't ever come, and maybe because I've already lived yesterday. So today is what I'm praying about. And today is when I'm coming to you. And I want to close. I know I'm closing earlier than normal. Maybe it's because I've been under the weather. Maybe it's because this message is just coming straight off the top of my head and I don't have very many notes in front of me. But I want to close by mentioning a verse I've always cherished. It's from Hebrews chapter 4, when God's talking about how important it is for people to hear his voice, respond to his voice by crying out to him, and then to experience his salvation. And he says in Hebrews chapter 4, it says, God again set aside a certain day, calling it today. This he did when a long time ago he spoke through David, as in the passage already quoted. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. I just always thought that was a cool verse, that God would say, you know, I've picked out a great day for you to give your life to me. I have picked out the very best day for you to trust me. It's right there on your calendar, and the best way for you to see it is to look down at the day marked today. If you'll trust me today, you'll be saved. If you trust me today, you'll be fulfilled. If you'll trust me today, you will experience my provision. I mean, it's almost like the song that your mom probably used to sing around the house, or at least my mom did when she was vacuuming. She had two songs I remember her singing. One was Blessed Assurance, and I absolutely loved hearing her sing that. I don't know why I did. It just was kind of neat. As she was going around the house, she'd sing Blessed Assurance. But also, I remember hearing my mom sing One Day at a Time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all I'm asking from you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. Lord, help me today. Show me the way, one day at a time. I'm pretty sure that if Jesus turned his prophetic powers on that day when he was preaching about how to pray, and he looked into the far, far-reaching future, he might have seen someone penning those lyrics and said, good job. If you can get those lyrics into people's minds, maybe they can live on the daily. Maybe they can learn to ask for their daily bread. Maybe they can learn to trust me for just one step at a time. I hope that hearing this message today, this episode, will help you do that. I hope it will help you pray what Jesus said to pray and to trust God in the day without having to look for tomorrow, without having to worry about your past. There are other messages that will cover those things. Keep listening and I'll get there. But today, just learn to trust him for the day. Or tonight, when you're laying your head down, remember that that is the beginning of a new day, and his mercies are new by the time you wake up again. So anyway, thanks for listening. This was called Daily Bread, unless I change the title of it before I publish it. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Walking Close, Living Changed.
We hope today's episode encouraged you, challenged you, or met you right where you are.
If it did, share it with a friend or let us know what spoke to your heart.
Until next time, keep walking close and trusting that God's not done writing your story.